Hi, this is Doug Vogt from the Diehold Foundation again. This is video 1D. I'm going to cover dimensions 5 through 8 and what is gravity. So, let's start in. I'll be covering some of the information from Chapter 2 from the Theory of Multidimensional Reality. You can get this book from the Diehold Foundation, dieholdfoundation.com, or vectorpub.com, or Amazon. By the way, if you're overseas, there is a electronic book version you get through Amazon. Anyway, as I covered earlier, each carrier wave is represented by one of these slope angles of a carrier wave. All the carrier waves are, in essence, cumulative. In other words, I and you are a fourth dimensional being. We have the information for the third dimension, which is the physical matter that makes us up. And then on top of it, we have a consciousness that is superimposed and transmitted to the same coordinates in time and space as the three-dimensional objects, the matter that makes us up. The same thing goes for the successive dimensions 5 through 8. Each one is cumulative, and each one represents an exponential increase in energy. I should also expand and say I define dimensions differently. It's not just length, width, and depth. It's how much that entity can access information, perceive it, and how much potential it has. And there's exponential increases as you go up to the 8th, and you'll see what I mean. So, if you took the first 4 dimensions, let's say this is first, second, third, fourth dimension, and you superimposed the other 4 dimensions, carrier waves on it, you'd have 2 pyramids, this one offset by 45 degrees. Yes, this is the origin of the mandala. It shows up in the Far East, the Middle East, and all over. That is it. And this also represents 8 of the Hebrew letters. The dimensions 5 through 8, or sides 5 through 8, are the least used letters in the Torah. For I think a reason I'll explain in video series 2. Okay, the fifth dimensional beings. They're like an Uri Geller, but beyond it. And they're different examples or different stages of a fifth dimensional being. They wouldn't necessarily have to touch matter to move it. In other words, they'd use their mind and manipulate the information that makes up the matter in the Diehold to move its objects from point A to point B. In fact, I saw a Russian woman, it was back in the 70s, or was it 60s, that did that with a bunch of needles on a table, and they were moving around and some other things. Uri Geller bends objects, spoons, forks, stuff like that. That could be done if you have let's say a spoon or a knife. If you change the propagation rate at a point, then the object in this dimension is going to appear to bend. Anyway, they don't have to touch matter to actually physically move it. They communicate by thought only. I shouldn't say that. They could talk, or they can use telepathy, what we call telepathy, to communicate with somebody else. They can read people's minds, stuff like that. A few people can actually do that, very few, but yeah, it's like we all have glimpses of it, you know? That was they start acquiring more and more of their information through the Diehold rather than their physical senses from their bodies. The mind-body connection is much, much stronger. In essence, they can will their self well. If they're sick, their mind can fix it. The only reason we get old is the end caps in our DNA break down, and then it doesn't replicate correctly. They may be able to live hundreds of years as the Bible it gives examples of it. But I think that's maybe what they're doing. Anyway, it's, again, between the fourth and fifth dimensional beings, it's an exponential increase in energy. Sixth dimensional beings, these are really weird. They have no body. They don't need one. They're basically entirely a program or subroutine in the Diehold. But they could create matter. Time would be irrelevant to them, at least for remembering everything they did in the past, no matter how many millions of years it was. Like, let's say, how would you like to be reincarnated a couple of million times and remember all of it? At some point, you go nuts. And that's a key part. Ironically, Moses gives the clues for that and the people who put that technology in the cave. They, in essence, live forever because they're just a program. They do not die. There's no reason for them to. No physical body, able to remember everything. Sixth dimensional being possess greater potential than the previous three other dimensions. They may have the capability to create three-dimensional objects. That, I'm pretty sure of it. They gather information entirely from the Diehold, but I think they use third, fourth, and fifth dimensional objects or beings as reference points to what they're doing. The sixth dimension, a planet. Now, the criteria for me dimensions, as I said earlier, was, does it exist in time and space? Yes. Is this a very long time? Does it have energy or frequencies and stuff like that? Does it demonstrate that? Boy, does it ever. And you'll see some examples of it shortly. Let's see. The internal frequency is basically the thing. We don't know exactly what kind of an existence would be, but I assume it would be able to perceive the universe, or at least a good chunk of it, from its consciousness accessing data from the Diehold. Ironically, American Indian and some other Indian cultures believe that the Earth and the planets and the sun were an entity, a being. I just don't know what kind of existence it is. All I know is I'm pretty sure it would be a seventh dimensional being rather. It's seventh dimensional existence. Okay, now I'm going to tell you something funny. It's regarding one of the 4 or 5 things that proves there is frequencies going on in here, that this isn't like a solid iron core in the center, which I'm going to show you in a second. I used to get reports from NOAA and also from USGS regarding earthquake data and also sunspots. And they used to come in magazines or a monthly newsletter like. I made a database over an 8 or 10 year period. And this is before laser printers. And I had a print on the line printer. And it was a big graph. And I taped it all together. And I spread it out on my living floor. It was at least 20 or 25 feet long. One on the sunspots, and then one also for earthquakes on the Earth. Earthquake. And lo and behold, now at first I matched up day to day, and it did match up. What I was looking for to see if there was a correlation between sunspot maximums or sunspot activity and earthquakes on the Earth. And I knew it wasn't something on the surface. I was sure that was not it. So then I slid it. And lo and behold, what I found was if it was on or near sunspot maximum, it was about 240 days after a big sunspot flare-up, there was an increase in earthquakes on the Earth. If you went further away from sunspot maximum, sunspot minimum, it was more like 270, 280 days. So what I'm saying, what I may have proved, is that whatever cycles are going on in the center of the sun is also common to the center of the Earth. this is the current model of the sun, our Earth rather, sorry. They think the center of the Earth is a solid iron core. Why do they say that? Only because they learned in first grade, in first physics class or science class about a bar magnet. And the Earth has a North Pole and a South Pole. Of course it flips, but they're ignoring that fact right now. And therefore it's got to be a center core. Now they say on the outside it's a liquid metal, and by the way the center is about like 15 or 1600 miles in diameter. So the question is makes no sense to me, is here you've got tremendous heat. It's like 5,000–6,000 degrees, and it's not going to translate and turn the center into liquid too? Doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's not logical. But the only reason they're doing it, there's two reasons. I'm going to see the other one in a second, is because of the bar magnet issue. Okay. So, what's really going on here by the theory of multidimensional reality is a center modulation point. Just like the atom, you've got a tremendous amount of information being directed to a point in time and space. And it's so high in energy that the atom can't really form until it gets far enough away from the center modulation point that starts creating matter on the outside here. So, and it cools down, then you have the mantle, and then finally this crust that we live on, with really pretty thin. Now, the earthquake stuff, this is the other reason why they think it's a solid core in the center. Let's say there's an earthquake here. The earthquake waves go like this. The S waves are on the surface like this, and then the P waves go through the center. So they pick it up here. So this is actually a graph of what it looks like. Earthquake happens here at ground zero, and this is the speed as it goes through the crust, and it gets to between the mantle and the outer core, it drops down because it's a liquid. But they will explain how come this big difference here, so abrupt. The S waves just drop off, and then it builds up, and then it's even here. So for that reason, I think it's solid. The reason I think it's not solid is that, remember, information is synonymous with the matter it creates. I think the center of the Earth could be more accurately described as a plasma. And in the plasma, I believe, a wavefront, this is a low frequency thing when an earthquake. It transmits as fast as through a plasma as it does through a solid. And that's the reason why it semi speeds up there. So that's the second reason. Doesn't make any sense. Now, this is I think the third reason that there's a center modulation point. There's no solid iron core in the middle. And it's the D, E, F1 and F2 layers in the upper atmosphere, in the ionosphere. These are created by, it's uniform around the Earth. It only changes due to daytime and nighttime. Ham radio operators bounce signals off of these layers, and they could work somebody thousands of miles away on the 10 or 30 meter band. So the only way these things can exist around the Earth is that something is producing enough radio noise in the center of the Earth. And that's not going to be a solid iron core at all. And this geodynamo theory that somebody in UCLA came up with is wrong also. You haven't need to take electronics yet either, because you can't have two magnetic fields crossing each other and get an electrostatic field. And this is the result of an electrostatic field. There's something going on in the center of the Earth that has to do with modulation of some sort. Now, what causes this, I have an analogy, it's called group waves. And when you have two or more frequencies together, sometimes they have beat frequencies. and it creates a group wave. So these group waves, that DE, F1, and F2 ionosphere, let's just say layers in the atmosphere, I think is due to this, but this has to be transmitted from the center of the Earth, not from any place else. Here's another one. During the space program, they found that when satellites went through the roughly 5 degrees of the equator, they got a lot of static crashes. I mean, a lot of static noise. That static noise has to be generated from the center of the Earth. Notice it's 90 degrees out of phase from where the direction of the information would be, or the north-south pole. Just like that. That's another reason cannot be a solid iron core in this thing. Van Allen belts may also be an example, but they would probably say that's the magnetic field. But still, the static fields and the ionosphere and stuff like that, no way. Eighth dimension, a star. Constructed the same way, but it has that one extra carrier wave exponential increase from a planet. I believe the stars give birth to the planets. So when they see a binary star, usually almost always one is larger than the smaller sun. You know, they think it's a binary system with two suns. No. The star gave birth to one of its planets, and it's along the planetary plane. So I can say the same thing about the corona being like in the ionosphere, those DE, F1, and F2 layers. Same thing. Something's being transferred from the center. And you'll see what I mean in a second. It makes no sense to have all this nuclear fuel going on here, and it percolates there, and then you have sunspots. I mean, it just really doesn't. Now, this is where this is one of the things that destroys this idea that when a star novas, it destroys itself, you never see it again, or becomes a black hole, or a neutron star, or fill in the blanks. V. Aether Monocriotis, I hope I said that right. It novaed, this is in a normal condition, May of 1989. There it is right there. It novaed roughly March 2002. There it is. Starts off. This is May 20th, 2002. The dust shell expands. Gee, there's the star. It didn't blow itself up, did it? September 2nd, 2002. The dust shell expands more. You see where the hole is here? It expands and becomes a bigger hole. Like this, dust shell. Here is October 28th. Dust shell expands even more. The hole opens even more. And then finally, December 17th, 2002. Dust shell's way out here, and there it is. This is a really big star. But you notice it didn't blow up and disappear. It's still there. Now, I read almost all the articles, journal articles, that were talking about V838. And they said, well, it's more than 20,000 light years away. It's less than 26, less than 30. They didn't want to say what it was. This thing novaed right on 24,000 light years away, or 24,000 years ago. 2 cycles ago. Novaed right on it. So, also, they could have told what the distance is real easy with the redshift. You have no problem finding the source of light. You can get a redshift off of that thing real easy. How come they didn't get it? The error would only have been like 2.5 or 3%. That's what I found. But nope, they didn't want to tell anybody. Here, this is a distant star, and this is its planetary plane. The star's here. This was taken, I think, with an IR telescope. And you can see the energy being perpendicular to its poles along its planetary plane, along its equator. This you're looking down at the pole, and this is how the stuff blows out when it novas, and the remnant dust shells. Now their theory is the dust shell spins in and becomes the star. No, the star itself is creating that stuff. They got in reverse, maybe deliberately. Here's another example, looking down at the pole of the star, and here's the planetary disk that it forms, this dust and material. On here, you're looking at the equator, and here it is just like the Earth. By the way, when I went to NASA in Canaveral a couple of weeks ago, I asked them about the Earth and the radio noise on the equatorial plane. He said, I had heard that the other planets were found, they found the same thing on the other planets. He said, yeah, all the planets that they found have this radio noise. Sometimes they have ice. Saturn's most obvious, no problem seeing it. But the others have it also, either as ice there or other debris, but they all do. So it's something coming from the center of the planet. It is not a piece of iron. I mean, that's kind of a joke. I can't believe they would be so stupid. Anyway, here's looking at the top of a star and this planetary disk around here. There's probably a planet in this area right here, but this, again, take it with IR telescope, I think. Now, this is our own little sun. Now, they discovered this, remember, as 1984. My first book came out in 1978, 79, it was 1978. And I predicted something like this, that it would do it. And the Voyager 2, they turned on the camera perpendicular to its flight path, and they photographed the remnant dust shells from our own star's novas, previous novas, not more than one. And there it is. It's called the Kuiper, K-U-I-P-E-R belt. Go look it up and go see it. That's the evidence, and it's called a planetary plane, a disk. That's the evidence our sun novas. This isn't the stuff that created the sun, it's the opposite. That created the Kuiper belt, plus it created the planets too. This is our wonderful sun. It's called helioseismology. And back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, they noticed the sun had multiple frequencies. The Russians found one 2 minutes and 40 seconds, never forgot that. There's no way the thing could be powered by nuclear fusion. You imagine a random nuclear bombs going off in the middle of this thing and creates a pattern like this that pulsates? Of course not. In fact, I saw one was at the University of Washington. There was a video and it showed like a bunch of pentagons all matched together on the surface of the sun as it pulsated. No, there's a frequency standard going on inside. They don't know what it is. That's why they don't want to talk about it, or they don't want to go near it because they know they can't explain it. Here, they can't explain something as simple as the sunspot cycle or the Gleisberg cycle. You have to appreciate, if the current nuclear physics theories are correct, then a star's mass should be constantly decreasing as it burns up hydrogen, helium, and the lower elements, right? In order for it to increase its output, where does it get the additional mass? And it goes down again, and all of a sudden it goes up again 11.09 years later, and on the 8th one it really blows its brains out and then goes back down again? They can't explain this. There's obviously, one scientist even said it in his journal. He said, a solar physicist, he said, there must be some kind of clocking mechanism in the center of the sun. You might think so. Okay, what is gravity? Earth, sun. Okay, so what is gravity? I'll focus on the Earth right now. A tremendous amount of information makes up this center modulation point, and in turn the planet. That information will affect everything that comes near it. In essence, it pushes our information towards the center of the center modulation point. That's why when you stand on a scale, you're measuring the effect of our Earth's information in the area you're standing, plus how much mass you got, what your information, as it goes towards the center of the Earth. Same thing goes for the sun. Even more information. It affects all the planets and us, and that's what's going on. So gravity is nothing more than than the force that the information exerts on any other information. It's all happening in another dimension, probably in the second dimension. It's all happening there, or maybe the first dimension. It's affecting information around it. That's why when the nuclear physicists say, what is mass, they don't know. They're all looking for the Higgs boson to save their degrees. Very basically, there is no Higgs bosons. What you're looking at is basically the subatomic particles, if they're not just the frequencies that I say, have no weight. So it's information that we're really weighing. Your information, as the Earth underneath us affects it. Gravity test, gravity detector. This one's from the Max Planck Institute in Germany, in Hanover, Germany. They built this thing. It's basically two lasers, or the beam splitter here, and I think it's like 600 meters long each arm. It's very sensitive for certain things. And unfortunately, what happened was the laser had a lot of noise in it. Electronic noise, or it had noise in the image. So I'll try to step out here. Dr. Juan Maldacena, he's now a nuclear physicist at Princeton University. He said that the noise was a possibility that our universe was a hologram. Well, Dr. Craig Holland, director of the Center of Particle Astrophysics at the Fermi National Accelerator Laboratory, isn't that a mouthful? Boy, what a title. Calls holographic noise a fundamental universal uncertainty in the fabric of space-time due to a fundamental bandwidth of reality at the Planck's frequency of, it says 5.6 times 10 to the minus 44 seconds time. He's saying bits per second. He's saying it's bits. It's, really is what he's done. He's changed from time to bits of information, which he'd be basically right. But I was 40 years ahead of him. Anyway, his experiment didn't turn out the way he wanted it. It didn't prove anything, but the noise is probably that. It's not really detecting gravity. It's really detecting the information that makes up both the beam splitters in here and the later, what is light, And I think that's the issue. But they're on the right track. In essence, it's like a hologram, but it creates what we call matter. Again, this is 501c3 contributions are appreciated. You can write to us at info@dieholdfoundation.com. You can get the books that we have either at Amazon or the Foundation's website or vectorpub.com. Thank you for listening. I hope I didn't run over in time.